Once a vision of future living, the Kingswood Estate, built in 1950, was one of the first council estates of its kind. But time has taken its toll on these blocks, and 70 years later, many of them are beginning to look their age. There is now widespread damp and toxic black mould in many of these 750 homes. Families here say that the landlord has left them living in slum-like Dickensian conditions.
The repairs were not repairs, and nobody seemed to pick up on it.
Not just cracks in the walls, but a deeper, more threatening problem caused by damp. Some say it's already taken a major toll on their health.
About 15 or whatever years, me and my wife has lived in the kitchen because of the mould, yeah.
For 78-year-old Brian Joyce, breathing is a task that makes everyday life a challenge. It's something he now connects directly to the poisonous air inside his home. Where the mould became so widespread, he and his wife Rita had no choice but to spend most of their waking hours here in the kitchen.
We've got mould in the cupboards. The mould's everywhere now, basically.
They raised a family in this home. Lifelong happy memories tainted by mould and damp.
This is our bedroom, or was our bedroom.
Letters of complaint to Southwark Council, which Brian says, for years, simply fell on deaf ears.
Year after year, to the environmental health officer, and ignored.
And here on the Kingswood Estate, he's not the only one.
I've told my son not to come in here because he's got asthma problem. Really angry. One, you pay rent, you pay your council tax, expecting if there's a problem, it will be dealt with, and then it's not being dealt with. Disappointed that nobody's listening, they're not doing anything about it.
There are dozens of mothers and fathers just like Marta here, worried about the effect the mould is having on their children's health. Brian and his wife both impacted by the air inside. Rita's breathlessness meant she had to use a wheelchair.
It just got worse and worse.
Brian's desperation led him to invite 3 separate GPs to examine the conditions inside his home. 3 visits and accompanying letters in 2015, 2017 and early last year. This is written from your doctor to the council 4 years ago, and nothing has changed.
No.
Complaints written by doctors to the council calling for action to be taken immediately.
I've lived here for 5 years now, and for the last 4 years we've been having a problem with the fumes.
400 yards down the road is George, forced to call in the experts to prove to his landlord, the council, that conditions inside his home are damaging his children's health. He's chosen to remain anonymous for fear of reprisals.
It's affecting my family quite a lot.
This family have more than just the damp to contend with. George says he, his wife and their 2 small children live in the same block as a drug dealer, that the fumes from a makeshift lab enter their home.
Our child in here slept here for a week, and every night she would cough, vomit and sneeze throughout the night. We packed up everything, took our child into the bedroom where we all sleep.
You all sleep in here?
We all sleep in there.
Packed into one small room at night, George says his complaints have been dismissed.
They told me that it's just in my head, it's killing me. I go to sleep with this mask all night. If I don't, then in the morning I'll be very ill. Chest pains, I'll be feeling like drunk, dizzy and feeling drunk.
For 4 years?
For 4 years. 4 years. No one can stand this. It wears you down. It's affected our life completely.
In 2018, George paid for a survey by an independent air quality expert who discovered the family was breathing air that could pose serious health problems. Roger Martin is the man who carried out that test 2 years ago.
I'm astonished that 2 years later nothing seems to have been done. The problem, as identified by us, hasn't been explored further. To see something of this nature appear in somebody's flat whilst everybody's asleep at 3:30 in the morning is certainly extremely unusual.
And dangerous.
Potentially very dangerous. It could easily be associated with some illicit laboratory activities.
Southwark Council says to date no evidence of wrongdoing has been found. However, we remain in contact with the resident and will continue to work with them to investigate any further issues and to take the appropriate action if evidence of drug-related activity is found. Southwark has the largest proportion of social housing across all London boroughs, around 35,000 council homes to look after. The 750 here on the Kingswood Estate, on the southern outskirts of Southwark, are a drop in the ocean for one of the country's biggest local authorities.
In the living room here.
Back at Brian's, he and his wife, like George, commissioned an expert to carry out a test. The results were shocking. Very high level of mould colonies present.
Yeah.
This confirms the area sampled is heavily contaminated. Medical experts say mould spores in the volumes discovered in Brian's home cause serious respiratory infections. Prolonged exposure is particularly harmful.
The Southwark government has obviously got the intelligence to know that mould causes respiratory problems and just ignored it basically.
Brian's wife was eventually admitted to hospital. Whilst there, the consultant wrote to the council imploring it to take action.
She has a mould problem in the house which the council have not been able to deal with due to the lack of public funding, and her health needs having restrictive lung disease.
Rita's breathing problems never improved, and sadly 18 months ago she died. Do you think if this mould and damp hadn't been around for so long, your wife
Would still be alive? I believe it, I really believe it. I said to him, I want the cause of my wife's death investigated.
In response, Southwark Council has said we've been offering Mr. Joyce a full package of works to address all the problems in his flat for some time, as well as the removal of all mould. Any suggestion that we have not is not true. Unfortunately, to date, he's declined to give the council access. We have set aside £32 million for our next round of major improvements to the Kingswood Estate. As is normal for an estate of its age, a range of work is now needed to maintain the buildings, including to address damp issues. We had planned to start last year, but residents asked us to look again at whether the external wall insulation our surveyors have recommended is right for the estate. In response, we've brought in an independent expert to look at this with residents.
I've got her up there to talk to her, you know. No, she's not there. I'm not going off my head or anything, but what do you say? When the main thing in life goes out of your life, where are you know?
He moved in his prime and for 40 years has been blighted by damp and mould. Now towards the end of his life, Brian feels enormously let down by his landlord. The only question for many who live inside these homes is what comes next.